Every woman trains men. The question is whether she does it with power or with weakness. From the moment a man meets you, you are teaching him how to treat you. Your silence, your words, your pauses, your withdrawals, they are all instructions. The tragedy is that most women teach unconsciously. They reward bad behavior, forgive too quickly, explain too much. They train men to disrespect them, then wonder why respect never arrives. But dangerous women know a secret. You never beg for treatment. You condition it. You make respect automatic. You wire it into a man's nervous system so deeply that he feels anxious without it. This is the conditioning code. It is not about screaming or endless arguments or emotional outbursts. It is about patterns, subtle repetition, quiet reinforcement, until a man cannot think of you without adjusting his behavior. He does not know why he fears disappointing you. He does not know why your silence feels heavy. But he knows he cannot ignore it. Chapter 1. The Psychology of Conditioning. To understand the conditioning code, you must understand the mind. Human beings are shaped by patterns. What is rewarded is repeated. What is punished is avoided. The principle is the same whether you are training a child, an animal, or a lover. The brain is wired to connect action with outcome. Think about it. If a man arrives late and you smile, forgive, and still give him your time, you have rewarded lateness. You have trained him to do it again. If he neglects you, ignores your needs, and you respond with begging or chasing, you have rewarded neglect. He learns that pulling away makes you chase harder. But if you withdraw your presence after disrespect, if you go silent after neglect, if you cut rewards when he fails, you train him to link bad behavior with loss. This is why dangerous women rarely argue. They do not waste energy on shouting matches. They understand that words are cheap, but actions are unforgettable. The brain does not remember explanations. It remembers consequences. The conditioning code works in silence, in patterns, in timing. It is less about what you say and more about what you allow, and history gives us powerful proof. Chapter 2. Catherine the Great. Training a court to obey. Let us step into Russia, the 18th century. The palaces of St. Petersburg gleam with gold, but behind the walls is rot, court intrigue, betrayal, whispers of coups. At the center of this chaos is a foreign girl, barely a teenager, brought from Germany to marry the heir to the Russian throne. Her name is Sophia, but history remembers her as Catherine the Great. When she arrived, she was nobody, a pawn. Her husband, Peter, despised her. He flaunted his mistresses. He mocked her in public. He humiliated her in front of the court. Most women would have collapsed under this weight, become bitter or broken. Catherine did not. She was already studying the most important lesson. You cannot control how men treat you, but you can control how you condition their behavior. Instead of pleading with Peter, she went silent. Instead of fighting for scraps of affection, she withheld hers completely. Where other women would have cried, Catherine remained calm. Where other wives would have begged, Catherine turned cold. This unsettled Peter far more than jealousy ever could. He began to stumble, unsure of himself, because Catherine refused to play the role of the wounded wife. With her lovers, Catherine was equally deliberate. She gave warmth sparingly, never endlessly. She conditioned them to crave her approval, to compete for her attention. Each smile, each touch, Each night of intimacy was rationed like treasure. The less she gave, the harder they fought to earn it. She created scarcity, and scarcity breeds obsession. But her genius went beyond romance. Catherine trained her entire court. She made her approval scarce. She rewarded loyalty with access, but withdrew instantly from betrayal. Ministers learned to anticipate her silence, because her silence was heavier than threats. Generals knew that her detachment was punishment enough. Foreign ambassadors wrote back to their kings that Catherine seemed to control men without issuing commands, that her absence alone created panic. This was the conditioning code at work. Catherine was not reactive. She was strategic. Every glance, every withdrawal, every rationed reward was part of the same pattern. Over time, it trained an entire empire. The coup. Training pays off. By 1762, Catherine was ready. Peter, now emperor, was despised. He mocked the Orthodox Church, alienated his soldiers, and humiliated his wife. But Catherine had been conditioning her circle for years. She had woven loyalty silently, consistently, patiently. When the moment came, she struck. She rode out in uniform, calm and composed. To the regiments she had trained with silence and scarcity, soldiers fell to their knees. Nobles pledged loyalty. Ministers who once served Peter shifted to Catherine without hesitation. Why? Because she had already conditioned them. She was the sun, and they had learned to orbit her. Peter was deposed in days, imprisoned, dead shortly after. Catherine took the throne, not with a battlefield victory, not with brute force, but with conditioning. The empire had already been trained to prefer her. Her reign lasted 34 years. She expanded Russia's territory, modernized its government, and secured her place as one of Europe's greatest monarchs. But beneath the political brilliance was psychological brilliance. Catherine trained men, lovers, generals, ministers, not through pleading, but through conditioning. Mini lessons from Catherine's conditioning code. 1. Silence unsettles more than shouting. Catherine never wasted time on tears or rage. She let silence work. Silence forces reflection. Silence conditions uncertainty. 2. Scarcity creates devotion. Her rationed affection made courtiers desperate. Scarcity turns ordinary attention into priceless currency. 3. Consequences matter more than threats. Catherine never made empty warnings. She acted. A betrayal meant exile. A mistake meant withdrawal. One consequence reconditions behavior faster than 100 arguments. 4. Training is constant. Every interaction teaches. Catherine never wasted an encounter. Even a glance, even a pause, was training. Modern reflection. You may not be an empress, but Catherine's code applies everywhere. If a man disrespects you and you forgive instantly, you have trained him to continue. If he feels the sting of your silence, the loss of your presence, you have trained him to respect. If your praise is constant, it loses value. But if your praise is rare, earned, scarce, it becomes addictive. This is not cruelty. This is conditioning. It is the hidden language of power. And Catherine was not the only one. Across history, women who mastered the conditioning code bent men into obsession, loyalty, and ruin. In our next chapter, we will explore the salons of France, where courtesans like Ninon de l'Enclos made men devote fortunes to her, even after death. and we will see how Josephine Bonaparte conditioned the most ambitious man in Europe, Napoleon himself, into lifelong submission. Chapter 3. Ninon de l'Enclos, the courtesan who trained men for a lifetime. 17th century Paris. The salons of the French elite were places of gossip, philosophy, and seduction, and at the center of this glittering world was a woman who terrified wives, fascinated kings, and trained generations of men without ever lifting a sword. Her name was Ninon de l'Enclos. Ninon was not born rich. She was not a princess. She was a courtesan, a woman who lived outside the conventional roles of wife or nun. Yet she became more influential than most queens. Her salon drew philosophers, noblemen, and poets. Men who entered her orbit often never escaped it. What was her secret? Ninon understood the conditioning code. She rationed affection with the precision of a surgeon. She trained men to crave her presence, not through endless availability, but through withdrawal. She gave warmth sparingly, then withheld it until they begged. She used humor, wit, and silence as tools, creating contrast between charm and distance. Ninon never apologized for her power. She made men pay not only in money, but in loyalty, in years of devotion. She trained them to compete for her, conditioned them to link her presence with pleasure and her absence with agony. And here is the astonishing part. Her influence outlived her. Ninon lived into her 80s, and in her will, she left money for the education of a young boy, François-Marie Arouet, later known as Voltaire. The philosopher who shook Europe grew up under the influence of a woman long dead. Ninon had trained men in her lifetime, and through Voltaire, she trained generations after. Her lesson is eternal. If you understand scarcity, silence, and contrast, you can condition not just one man, but entire cultures. Chapter 4. Josephine Bonaparte, the woman Napoleon could not escape. Now let us travel to France again, a century later. The French Revolution has ended. A new star rises, Napoleon Bonaparte, the general who would crown himself emperor. He conquered Europe with armies, but at home he was conquered by a single woman, Josephine. Josephine was not a typical beauty. She was older than Napoleon, a widow with children. She carried herself with elegance, but it was not her looks that enslaved him. It was her mastery of conditioning. When Napoleon met her, he was obsessed instantly. He wrote her letters, dripping with passion, begging for her affection. Josephine, however, remained calm. She rationed her responses. Sometimes she replied. Sometimes she did not. Sometimes she smiled. Sometimes she withheld. Napoleon's obsession only grew. He was conditioned, not by lavish affection, but by scarcity. Even when Josephine was unfaithful, Napoleon could not leave her. Why? Because she had trained him to link her absence with agony and her rare approval with ecstasy. He fought wars across Europe, yet wrote desperate love letters, begging her to think of him. When he crowned himself emperor in 1804, he placed the crown on his own head, but then turned and crowned Josephine with his own hands. A symbolic act. She was not simply his wife. She was his empress, his obsession, his conditioning made flesh. Eventually, Napoleon divorced her because she could not produce an heir. Yet even then, he never escaped her. On his deathbed years later, exiled on the island of St. Helena, his final whispered words were, "France, army, head of the army, Josephine." She haunted him until the end. Josephine's power was not force, it was not pleading, it was conditioning. She trained the most ambitious man in Europe into lifelong submission. Chapter 5. The Practical Tactics of Conditioning. So what can modern women learn from Ninon and Josephine? The principles are ancient, but the application is timeless. Dangerous women use specific tactics, repeated until they become instinct. 1. Withhold before you reward. Never give affection instantly. Delay it. Let him wait, let him crave. Scarcity sharpens desire. 2. Use silence as correction. Instead of arguing, go quiet. Silence unsettles more than shouting. He will feel the absence and adjust his behavior. 3. Reward sparingly. When he does earn your affection, give it in small doses. A smile, a touch, a word of approval. Scarcity makes the reward unforgettable. 4. Detach from outcome. Conditioning works only when you are willing to withdraw. If you cling, he learns he can misbehave without consequence. Detachment terrifies because it proves you cannot be controlled. 5. Introduce unpredictability. Sometimes respond quickly, sometimes slowly. Sometimes laugh, sometimes stay cold. Unpredictability forces him to stay alert, never secure, always chasing. These tactics work because they bypass logic and sink into instinct. Men cannot explain why they crave the woman who withdraws, or why silence makes them restless. But their behavior changes. Conditioning is not intellectual. It is visceral. Mini lessons from Ninon and Josephine. Ninon proved that devotion can outlast life. When you train men with scarcity and contrast, they remain loyal even in your absence. Josephine proved that even emperors can be enslaved. A woman who conditions wisely can bind the most powerful man alive to her presence. Both proved that the conditioning code does not require beauty or youth. It requires strategy. Men bow not to looks, but to the patterns that shape their emotions. Modern reflection. Imagine this in today's world. A woman who answers texts instantly, who forgives immediately, who explains endlessly. She trains men to take her for granted. Her presence becomes cheap, but the woman who delays her replies, who withdraws after disrespect, who rewards sparingly, she trains men to respect her, fear her absence, and crave her presence. The ordinary woman complains about mistreatment. The dangerous woman never needs to complain, because she has conditioned respect from the start. In our next chapter, we will push the conditioning code even further. We will explore how dangerous women create total dependence, training men not just to respect them, but to reorganize their entire lives around them. We will see how boundaries, scarcity, and mystery create not only obsession, but surrender. Chapter 6. Training for Total Dependence. So far we've seen how Catherine the Great conditioned respect, how Ninon de l'Enclos conditioned loyalty, and how Josephine conditioned obsession. But the most dangerous women in history went even further. They created total dependence. They trained men not just to respect them, not just to adore them, but to reorganize their entire lives around them. Dependence is the highest form of conditioning. It is when a man no longer thinks in terms of his own will, but in terms of her presence. Every decision runs through her, consciously or unconsciously. His career, his finances, his friendships, even his identity begin to orbit her. He becomes conditioned to see himself not as separate, but as an extension of her approval. How does this happen? Through three-layered tactics: boundaries, scarcity, and mystery. 1. Boundaries create the frame. A dangerous woman sets rules without raising her voice. She does not explain why she will not tolerate certain behavior. She simply withdraws when boundaries are crossed. Over time, the man learns. Her boundaries are reality. They shape his behavior the way laws shape society. 2. Scarcity creates value. Affection, attention, intimacy. When given rarely, they acquire the weight of gold. The man becomes addicted to the rare highs. He lives for the moments she smiles, the nights she stays close, the words she offers sparingly. Scarcity rewires his brain. He craves her because she is not always there. 3. Mystery creates obsession. The dangerous woman never reveals herself fully. She withholds details, answers in fragments, leaves traces of ambiguity. The man becomes consumed with trying to solve her, to unlock her, to own what cannot be owned. This endless pursuit deepens dependence because he never feels finished. Together, these three tactics create a loop. He tests boundaries, feels loss, corrects his behavior. He receives a rare reward, feels bliss, and chases harder. He tries to know her, fails, and grows more obsessed. Over time, his life bends entirely around her presence. Chapter 7. Modern Case Studies. The Conditioning Code. Today. History is full of examples, but we can see the conditioning code in modern life as well. Celebrities and influencers. Why do some women remain endlessly fascinating while others vanish after one season? The difference is conditioning. The unforgettable ones reveal little, post sparingly, vanish at their peak, then reappear with control. They train the world to crave them. Relationships. Why do some men chase for years while others vanish after weeks? The difference is boundaries and scarcity. The dangerous woman makes absence a weapon. The ordinary woman makes herself common. Workplace dynamics. Even in boardrooms, women who master conditioning rise above. The woman who does not laugh at every joke, who answers with pauses, who rewards sparingly, who withdraws from disrespect. She trains colleagues to treat her as authority without ever asking. The same laws apply everywhere. People treat you how you train them. Men, bosses, friends, rivals, all respond to the same code. Chapter 8. Practical Conditioning in Action. To make this tangible, here are examples of how to apply the conditioning code in daily life. Texting. Never answer immediately. Delay your responses. Make your attention scarce. Condition him to wait, to anticipate. Conversations. Replace explanations with silence. If he disrespects you, do not argue. Go silent. He will replay his words and self-correct. Affection. Offer warmth only after loyalty. A smile when he earns it. A touch when he deserves it. Scarcity makes every gesture addictive. Boundaries. Enforce them calmly. No threats, no warnings. Simply act. If he is late, cancel. If he disrespects, withdraw. Action conditions faster than speeches. Mystery. Do not reveal everything. Share fragments. Answer indirectly. Leave him chasing the full picture. The unsolved puzzle creates dependence. Remember, consistency creates conditioning. You do not need cruelty. You do not need endless games. You need discipline. Every action trains. every silence teaches, every withdrawal reprograms. Chapter 9. The Escalation. The ordinary woman hopes for respect. She hopes men will behave well out of decency. But history and psychology show the truth. Men behave according to conditioning. Catherine did not hope. She trained. Ninon did not hope. She trained. Josephine did not hope. She trained. And here is the paradox. Men actually prefer it. A man may resent chaos. He may resist nagging. He may fight with shouting. But he cannot resist conditioning. His nervous system adapts without his consent. He finds himself craving the woman who trains him and losing interest in the one who does not. Conditioning is not cruelty. It is clarity. It is the difference between begging for treatment and creating it automatically. The punchline. So what is the final truth of the conditioning code? The ordinary woman argues. The beautiful woman pleads. But the dangerous woman, she trains. Because men do not obey love. They do not obey beauty. They obey conditioning. And once a man has been conditioned, once his nervous system links your presence with reward and your absence with loss, he is no longer free. He is yours, not because you asked, not because you begged, but because you trained him that way. That is the conditioning code, the forbidden law that makes a woman unforgettable.